what are you actually taking out? Like you took out what God had structured.
Yeah, but we're back to the purity of a people listening for the Spirit together.
Yeah,
Get it, the structures, the rules.
that's called health, wealth, and prosperity.
Yeah, okay, so there's a danger. There's a Joel Osteen danger to giving up some of the orthodoxy of our historical heritage, for sure, yeah. And anybody else have a strong feeling on that question?
Movement feels like that emotion is its North Star.
Ooh, okay.
And we can't, emotions are good, but they can't be, we need a framework. That's why that's why liturgy and call and response, that's why all those things are so
Sure.
critical, because we can't rely just on our own emotions.
Yeah. I like that you're bringing it to the Sunday service, because I think you could think about different traditions as like far on that side of the spectrum or far on this side. And I like that you're hearing or feeling that there's this interplay where beauty really happens. Because I think a lot of people would say, we got to get out of here. No more, crazy, unexpected. And then a lot of people would say, this is the problem. We got to... Anyway, I think you're right, Tim. You kind of busted my either-or trap. And it's a both and, right? Institutional structures and hierarchies are baked into the commands of the New Testament when we see how a church is designed. And then, as soon as a fresh movement of the gospel happens, there are all these kind of institution questions that have to follow it. Like, all right, where do we meet? Who's gonna say something from the Bible? Is there money? Where's it going? We have to start making institutional decisions. But I think in that both and, I don't want to say these two things are equally important. I think the institution is necessary the way that it relates to a movement, the way that an altar relates to fire. Thinking about that Elijah example from recently, that an institution is the structure that God has ordained, but a movement, this is not a human thing that we're creating. God's Spirit indwells the church and means to kind of propel us outward, and it acts as the fire from heaven descending. I'm thinking about a story in Isaiah 6 where Isaiah goes to the temple like he probably did every single day, but then there's this one day where the glory of the Lord is there and his train fills the temple, and Isaiah has this vision and is forever changed. And that's the secret sauce, I think. We want to be a church that isn't merely an institution, but has that fire, that train filling the temple, that supernatural embodiment. And so I can think of three characteristics that I want to move through of kind of a church that embodies this both and, a church on the move, that it's commissioned, it's contextual, and it's confrontational. Spicy. So let's walk through those. First, the church is commissioned. When you think about the metaphors for the church in the New Testament, there are over 80. We can think about a body, bride, vine. There's a few here, but you are a chosen race, which is a call back to the story of Israel, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession. But then there's one why baked into this verse, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. So there are a lot of things a church is meant to accomplish, a lot of metaphors for how she moves in the world, relates to God, but there's one calling to proclaim the excellencies of him who called us out of darkness into his marvelous light, to display God's glory. That is our commission, that God has invited us into new life and invited us to reflect that life in the world. And so there are kind of four, we could say, spheres or contexts where that plays out. I'm calling them the four fronts of ministry for places where we can proclaim the excellencies. One, and maybe the most obvious, is evangelism and teaching. We could call that introducing people to God. I think that's a huge function of the church. Another is fellowship and community, right? Where we're introducing people to other people and entering these kind of beautiful, let us love one another type relationships that we're commanded to, that we're called to. Another is justice and service, connecting people to the needs of a community. And then culture and creativity. How do we integrate this faith that we have with work that we do? And how do we picture God's redemption in our 9 to 5 and our creative efforts? And I think it is really hard for a church to be doing well on all 4 of these fronts. Usually, a church is good at 1, maybe 2. I think Hope, especially when we talk about in our leadership meetings, like what are we crushing it at? I think that fellowship and community piece, and I think we got it here with some pancakes on the side. Tonight, I think we're really good at that. And I think that each of us is uniquely gifted to operate maybe specifically in one of these fronts. I don't want to say to the exclusion of others, because I think it's, again, a both and. But that's one of our discussion questions. Is there one of these that excites you, that you feel drawn to? Is there one of these you see as a clear opportunity for Hope to move into? Where are you uniquely gifted to operate in one of those spheres? So, a church on the move is commissioned into kind of these 4 different areas, but it's also contextual. Anybody know what this screenshot is from? Emperor's New Groove, nailed it. He's like, what is holding this woman together? And then he says, how long has that been in there? Yisma, right? So Zach talked about our contextualization in week 4, and it's one of the beauties of Christianity, is that it can take such different forms in different cultures. When Christianity came onto the scene, it was bizarre. It was like, okay, so you're a new religion, where are your temples? We don't have a temple, Jesus is our temple. Okay, well, where are your priests, the people who mediate between you and God? We don't have priests, Jesus is our priest. Where are the sacrifices? We don't have sacrifices, Jesus is our sacrifice. And it's weird that Christianity has the fewest kind of cultic elements in that sense of any world religion, even to the point where Paul can have this flexibility. I become all things to all people. Among the Jews, I can kind of do the Sabbath and avoid pork thing. Among my Roman brothers, I can, he's got this flexibility. I think it's beautiful that wherever there are Christians and the Word and water and bread and wine, there can be a church. And it gives us this incredible flexibility in the form that takes. But I think this is kind of a guiding principle. When Paul is becoming all things to all people, it's that he may win some of them. And so he's trying to, I can finally explain Yisma here. He's trying to remove the unnecessary lettuce from his teeth that prevents him getting a hearing from these people. He doesn't want some cultural, way that he presents the gospel to undermine the message and the power of the gospel. I think about some time we spent in Morocco, where some more seasoned missionaries there corrected us and asked that we not wear pants to our next, or not wear shorts, sorry. Oops. Recorded. Asked that we not wear shorts next time we came to the campus to meet with students, because shorts in that context are, children wear them and soccer players wear them, and they kind of undermine your credibility in a way of like, what are these guys? So there are things that we can do culturally that distract, that take away from what we're trying to communicate, this light that we're hoping to proclaim. And we have this flexibility, but we also have a burden to use that to remove distractions and to be contextual. So again, some discussion questions on how do you flesh that out. I think super tough as a church, even as individuals, to live and walk and be in the world, but yet be distinct, right? We're called to be confrontational, like a rock in the shoe. And I think it's interesting that this passage comes from the same book, 1 Corinthians, where Paul sees this flexibility. He also sees this incompatibility. We preach Christ crucified. It's foolish. The Jews want power. This is total weakness and humiliation. The Gentiles want wisdom. This is God coming in the flesh and dying. What a fool. And I think we're also called to carry this countercultural message to our world. There's a fundamental incompatibility between the city of God and the city of man that we walk around in. And like Jesus, we have the opportunity to confront the idols of the day. So I think that's a really hard balance that takes a lot of wisdom to think about contextualization, right? One example I'm thinking of is that we have Eighth and Roast coffee. Because we are in Nashville, and this is a cultural value that we recognize and can say, hey, we can flex to that. We don't want our Folgers to be a piece of lettuce in the tooth that prevents a hearing. Yeah, shout out to Katie and Julian. But then we're also designed to be confrontational, right? When you think about, oh, well, if all cultural values are neutral, I should have thought about some concrete analogies before this. Just freewheeling up here. Let's say materialism, right? That I guess having stuff is good. We are, humans created to operate in the world. But if we kind of cling to this stuff, there's maybe an inherent message in it that it's tied to our worth and value. And also, I don't know, we think about the dark underbelly of consumerism. There is all kinds of injustice and stomping on the least of these to get that price a few cents lower. And so we're called to live in a confrontational way that shows that simplicity and hospitality are a better way forward. So that's kind of what I've got for you. Again, the church is an institutional movement, both and, commissioned by Jesus to be a contextual counterculture that invites others in, and we need one another to figure out how do we do that with wisdom and grace and remove the unnecessary stumbling blocks, but hold on to the gospel where Jesus, the stumbling block, becomes the cornerstone. Bizarre, but we're on that journey together. So I've got some discussion questions for us here. Part of me wants us to, should we do like one big circle or maybe still tables? Big circle? Heck yeah. All right, let's do it. Circle up.